Alright, folks, this is episode 10 in our Tomato Seed to Harvest series, and we've come a long way. This time, I kind of felt like doing a recap of the whole journey so far and then update you guys on how things have progressed. We started in episode 1 by sowing some seeds using the paper towel method, where we put tomato seeds into a wet paper towel, into a Ziploc, and onto a heat mat. This method worked really well to speed up germination and to make it much more consistent. Here's a shot of my tomato and pepper seed baggies germinating on the warm mats. The bags create a greenhouse effect and trap the moisture and warmth, resulting in more even germination. Now here are some more of the tomato seeds we started, but to be exact, I'll list off the exact ones I'm doing. VF Roma, Rosella Purple, Sunny Boy, Brandy Boy, Sun Gold, Orange Jubilee, Mountain Magic, and a few mystery seed varieties I've had lying around for years. A few days after putting the bags on the heat mat, I took a look at the seeds in one of the bags and was pleased to see the seeds have already sprouted. This meant it was time to transfer them over to a tray with seed starting mix I made myself by combining 7 parts cocoa coir, 2 parts perlite, and 1 part vermiculite. I left the grow lights on after bottom watering them, and I left them for a couple of days. A couple days later, most of the seeds had poked out, and it was at this point I sowed the Mountain Magic seeds that had just been delivered using the same method. At this stage in the series, I'm still very new to my camera, my editing software, and my grow setup, and I think as we progress in this series, you'll be seeing a lot of improvement. Now, here's an up-close shot of my seedlings after they've just started forming their first true leaves. To me, this is a signal that I need to give these little fellas their first feed, cause keep in mind, my seed starting mix has no nutrients, it's sterile. When the tomatoes form their first true leaves, that's the stage at which the seedling moves away from using the resources of the seed to looking for the resources with its roots. Don't forget, the plants are still in my house at this stage, and I suppose it would be bad etiquette to stink up the house for everybody, huh? I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who watches me and supports me, and to ask you guys to check out my Amazon storefront if you're ever interested or curious about the products I use in my videos. I'm not sponsored by any of the companies that put out these products. These are just what I use and believe are solid products. Anyways, I like to bottom water the seedlings at this stage because I don't want to wash away or damage any of them by watering them from the top. And one important lesson I've learned with starting my seeds indoors like this is that with a starting mix like mine, I have to let the soil on the surface of each cell dry out completely before giving the seedlings any more water, or else I risk damping off, a nasty plant sickness that kills seedlings before they can even get growing. A few days later, I took the seedlings outside for their first taste of sunshine, and at this stage, while I had them outside, I gave them their first fish emulsion fertilizing to help kick things off a bit. I only let these guys have about an hour of sunshine on their first trip outside, in the morning, before the noon sun became too harsh. This is the process of hardening off indoor started tomato seedlings. We must gradually acclimate them to the outdoors wind, temperature, and extremely powerful sun. Now, all of this happened before my 3-week vacation, which happened a few days after this clip. And at this stage, the seedlings look alright, no significant yellowing or damage. Now, fast forward just over 3 weeks, right after my vacation. Disaster has struck. Basically, the second I left, the seedlings began yellowing, flopping over, getting burned leaves, and the growth was stunted. All signs that something is very wrong. Thankfully, I managed to piece together what happened. The trays were not exactly flat on the shelf, and when the caretakers of these plants bottom watered the seedlings, some seedlings would get all the water pooling under them, while others suffered of thirst. My initial response was to give these struggling seedlings some fish emulsion, and that seemed to help significantly, not just because of the feed itself, but because these thirsty plants finally got enough to drink. I want you to note how yellow and stunted these poor guys are so you can see the difference. In a second, you'll be able to see the green burpee 16-cell tray and how bad the Mountain Magics in it are doing. All yellow, limited signs of true leaves. I started the Mountain Magics about a week after everything else, so they were affected by the drought a little more than every other plant. Next, we will fast forward a few days into the future. At this stage, the seedlings have been properly watered for about 4 or 5 days of me being home from vacation. And here they are. They are looking much better. However, I did notice there were multiple plants per cell, and so I decided to tease them apart using a method I learned a few seasons ago. You pull the soil block out of the cell and then you rinse off as much of the starting mix from the roots as you can by dunking the root ball into a container with water. Even doing this untangles the majority of the roots. However, to get these two seedlings apart, I will gently begin to pull them by the stem in opposite directions. Every single time I feel any kind of resistance from the tangled roots, I'll dunk the seedlings back into the water, bring them back out, and give them a gentle pull again. Do this 3 or 4 times and the roots will come apart without taking any damage. It's that easy, and I've never killed a plant from doing this, even with the ones people recommend not trying to tease apart. As of editing this video, it is the 17th of May, and this is what the seedlings looked like 10 days ago. You can see they've started to put on some green growth, but aren't fully recovered yet. 8 days later, this is what they look like. You can see I put the frost cloth on because we have had a couple of cold nights, dropping down into the low 40s. The idea is to keep the cold wind, direct rain, and any potential frost off of these plants. But boy, they've put on growth, little beauties. Let's have a better look from the other side. At this point, I'm seeing very little yellowing, and the plants are growing pretty well. Now this little setup was a temporary thing until I finally got done clearing out an area and moving my cheap little greenhouse to it. There she is, all reliable. All this stuff will be in my Amazon storefront. We are going to have a few cold nights coming up, so this will do the job just fine. Taking a look inside, you can see the tomatoes are looking much better from the state they were in when I came back from my vacation to New Zealand. Isn't this just insane? These are the mountain magics we just teased apart a couple days ago. I'd say these seedlings are finally back on track, and I'll be giving them some more Alaska fish fertilizer. Looking over here, we've got the orange jubilee seedlings that were sown just a couple weeks ago. They look like they could use a little stanky fish feed. Over in this corner, you have 3 mountain magics in round pots, and the rest is the Romas, which took a lot of damage. Now, up here we have those mystery tomato seedlings I was telling you about. And next to them, we have some of the variety called Sunny Boy. Here, we've got some of that basil we sowed before vacation, and some brandy boys down here. And there's a few more mountain magics. So that's how we are looking in general, but let's have a closer look at a sun gold tomato plant. Overall, I'd say sun golds have done the best in terms of recovery. It is green and about 6 inches tall, which is pretty good considering some of the seedlings that were weak are about 2 inches tall right now. So that's the sun gold. Let me show you a variety that seems to be lagging behind a little. It is called Rosella Purple, and it is only about 2 to 3 inches tall. However, it is green and stocky, so maybe it will grow well. That's the Rosella Purples, and over here are some more mountain magics, which I love so much. Let's have a little look at the root balls of a sun gold tomato to see if it's reaching the bottom yet. To do so, we're going to take the pot, flip it over like this, while our fingers are on either side of the stem and give the pot a few squishes. The roots have in fact reached the bottom and are spreading throughout the medium, but they are not root bound, which is exactly what we want. Root bound means the roots have taken over the entire pot and are just wrapping around themselves looking for a way out. We'll put this little fella back in its home, and then we will kind of do a final look around and wrap things up a little bit. Here's one of them beloved mountain magics. Have I mentioned I love these golf ball sized tomatoes yet? There's the root ball of it, which we just teased apart and transplanted a couple days ago. Man, do they ever grow up fast. I've also got this Bluetooth thermometer in here to help me monitor the temp and humidity in the greenhouse so I can know when to close the door and the vents or open them up. Pretty useful. Alright, one last glance around the cheap greenhouse, and hopefully when you see these plants next, they'll have put on some growth. I'd like to thank you so much for getting to the end of the video, and I sure hope you're finding this series interesting. I really enjoyed putting together the recap of everything that's happened so far, and there will be many more updates coming up soon. One final reminder that if you're ever interested in any of the stuff I'm using, chances are it's in my Amazon storefront, which you can find in the description. Any purchases there will support me and help me to grow the channel. Massive thank you to all my subscribers and supporters who watch, comment, and leave likes on my video. You know who you are. And now I'll leave you with a minute or two of my sun gold tomato soaking in some of that warm sun. Thanks again, and I'll get back to you with a new video in a few days.